And welcome back. We are now going to get ready to go ahead and be able to apply some basic materials to add things such as color and texture and stuff like that to our shapes. Now, if we look at our shape currently, it's just this gray cube. There's nothing really special about it. And it's pretty solid, but how do we actually go about doing that step to actually transform this and even make it something simple like as a color like red? Well, the first thing I want to introduce us to before we actually start adding materials is to introduce the different modes that we have here for our shapes. So we have, of course, these kind of like circles that you can see up here. And this viewport mode is what's known as a wireframe. So this is simply just showing like our edges and our vertices. The solid mode right here is what we are already familiar with working with. So it's nothing unusual that we haven't seen. Now the next two modes are what's known as, material preview mode. So it kind of gives us an idea of like what that's going to look like with materials added. And then the last one is our rendered mode. So what would this look like if we actually were to render this out as an image? We're going to go back to material preview mode, and we're going to use this to actually help guide us when we actually start applying our materials. Now over here in our panel we have a bunch of different things that we can look at. But the one that's going to be of interest to us today is if we keep going all the way down near the bottom, we can see almost like a little circle again that says material if we hover over it. So if I click on that, you'll see that we now have some new options here available to us. And the very first thing you'll have to notice is we have this screen right here. This is material. This is the name of the current active material. We can rename this, for example. So maybe we want to call this sample sphere. And you can see that it'll update that material for me. Or maybe since it's a cube, maybe I want to call this sample cube. And so we can then dive into these different properties here to actually apply materials that are going to give this different things that we want to look at. Now there's a lot of things that we can get into with these different surface properties here. But for today, let's just keep it simple and look at the base color. So I'm just going to go ahead and go down towards the red here. And some of these things might be familiar for you. We have RGB, which is your red, green, blue values. So we might, for example, want to take that red all the way up. We have our hue saturation values here. So that allow us to kind of manipulate these. So maybe we want this to be a little darker shade of red. So you can, of course, pull this light and dark value, which of course messes with your value properties. You got your saturation, of course, which just tells you just how much of that cube is going to be saturated with red, and the hue, which of course is going to affect the individual color. Alpha, if you remember, is affecting transparency, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So this, of course, gives us a nice value to work with here for the sphere. And the nice thing is this material is now applied here. Now, let's say I want to add another shape. So remember, we can come over here and go add mesh, and we can choose to add different things here. So for example, let's say I want to add a UV sphere. And there he is. So I can just go ahead and grab the move tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and slide him out. And you'll notice that with the sphere, it doesn't have a property applied. However, I can easily come here to my drop down. You can see my sample cube material. I can double click it, and it has now applied that. And the nice thing is too, you can see in the preview mode what that would look like. Now, one thing I do want to warn about is that if I were to come here and change this color, let's just say I change this to like a yellow, you will see that it changes it for both shapes. And maybe I don't want that, which means then I need to go and create a new material. And you can see here, one nice thing is it tells you how many things are currently using this material. So right now we have two things that are currently using the material. We have our cube, we have our sphere. So if I want to go ahead and add another material, it's pretty easy to do so. So I can just come in here too, because we of course had our sample cube, and we want to change this. Now, if I just simply rename it, that's not going to give me a new property. It's not going to be a new material. Instead, I need to add a new material. All right, and of course, when I hit that, you can see now it's sample cube 001 because it's going to start based upon this property here. So I'm going to call this now sphere. And let's go back to our surface property here, and let's make this one a different color here. So let's change our base color. Let's make this sphere more of a blue. All right, and you can see now it is unique to this sphere. And even if I were to come in here and let's say add in let's do another mesh. Let's add in another cube, and let's just go ahead and grab him and move him over to here. You can see that even with him being a different cube, he doesn't have those properties exhibited on him. So I can go ahead and manipulate him, make it a little different. But again, you look here at the material selection and there's nothing in here. But I can now have these two options in here that I can easily go and apply them. Again, same thing as before. If I want to change this, I can just add a new material. It will rename it for me. Maybe I want to make this a, let's do a yellow cube. And I can very easily come down here to my base color and make that yellow. All right. It's a pretty simple process. And so let's just go ahead and throw in one more shape. Let's just go ahead and do another mesh. Let's do a cone this time. All right, and I'm just going to go grab him. And let's go ahead and put him here. And of course, he doesn't have a property applied, but we can, again, grab any of these colors that we want, any of these materials, and easily apply it. So let's just call this one orange cone. I'm going to swing to the orange properties here. Maybe I want this value to be a little bit brighter. Maybe I want it a little lower. But again, notice how that changed because I didn't actually create a new property again. So always a word of caution to make sure that you are doing these appropriately without accidentally overwriting. So just want to show you that that works there. So again, using this one, new property, orange cone, swing it to orange, and again we can play with our values here a little bit. All right, so that of course is a pretty cool little setup here. That should give us enough to get us started and be able to apply this techniques now to what we need to do moving forward.